Do you want to install a 3-piece set of cranks, but you're running into tons of problems? Today, I'm going to do an explain and review how to install 3-piece cranks. And I'm going to tell you everything from all the stuff that is wrong with it, to how to fix it, to the things that you may run into, to how to solve all those problems. You might run into different things where the bearing's not the right size. You might have some pieces that don't fit. You may hear a rattling thing in your bottom bracket. Maybe your sprocket doesn't align with your rear cog or your rear sprocket. Maybe even your sprocket hits the frame and you can't run that sprocket. So I'm gonna help you answer all those questions and give you the solution to get your bike rolling and for you to be riding. This customer wants to put these demolition cranks on. They had this Odyssey bottom bracket on their bike. This one looks just like this one, but it's not the same thing. If you look on the packaging, there's some with the 19 millimeter spindle and some have a 22. The bearing size is mid or Euro. So if you're trying to figure that out, I'll help you with that. This is the spindle that comes with the cranks. The problem was that this was in the frame. Now you had this spindle and now it's wiggling around and it doesn't stay tight. We'll be able to figure out all those answers and kind of help you out get to the right path. Main thing is to see what bottom bracket you have. If you have a American bottom bracket, a Euro bottom bracket, or a mid bottom bracket, and possibly a Spanish. Come down here, look at this bottom bracket. Notice how there's no threads in here. The frame's pretty thin. There's a little shoulder in here. Usually the bikes that are around nowadays come with this one, but there's other bottom brackets. So American bottom bracket will have a bottom bracket about this size. And if you want to know what that looks like, this frame down here, this is an American bottom bracket. Notice how much of a different size it is. So you could definitely tell what size bottom bracket that is. Euro bottom bracket's going to be smaller than this slightly, and then it's going to have threads in there. So it's easy to tell which bottom bracket is which. Now that's for the outside diameter. You notice on here, they have bottom bracket size. So mid, Euro. So we talked about Euro. Euro's about this side with threads. And then American's the big giant soda can size one. And then you got mid, which is this one here that just pushes right into the bottom bracket. So this is the right one he needs. So we're gonna break this open and I'm gonna show you the contents that are in here. So you're gonna get 2 bearings like so. You're gonna get a non-drive spacer. You're gonna get a bunch of these washers. Some are 5 mil, some are 2.5, and then you got these little 1 mil spacers here to give you all the gap and distance. Now come over here. I'm gonna show you this. On the back of here, they have single speed on this mountain bike wheel. There's a 135 rear end, but they got a single speed on here with a bunch of spacers and all that. But the problem over here is that the frame is really close to this bottom bracket, so he might not be able to run a big sprocket. So we're going to figure out how we can run the biggest sprocket on this frame as possible and keep the chain alignment straight. First off, you're going to want to use the 19 millimeter spindle. So this is his spindle. It fits right in there perfectly on there. We're going to be putting these inside of the frame. We're going to get a little bit of grease. What you want to do is you want to barely put any of this grease. You want to just touch the edge, and almost like a magician, you want to have just enough so when you wipe your hand's almost perfectly clean. We're going to do that on both sides first. Do it on the top and the bottom. Now we're going to show you how to put these bearings in if you don't have a tool specifically for it. We do a lot of videos where we show you how to do it when you don't have a specific tool. A lot of people aren't going to spend a bunch of money on this one tool. It's probably better just to take it to a bike shop. But then again, if you're not taking it to a bike shop, you're probably not going to buy this tool because the shop is charging more money than you have or that you're willing to pay. But most of the time, you have your old spindle and you may have your old bolt. So what I like to do is I like to tighten it all the way down like so. And I like to take the normal bearing, and if you slide it on here, notice how it's pretty close to that. So we don't want to do that. We actually want to slide a washer on there, and hopefully This thing could hold the bearing, allow you to tap it in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you here where you could put it inside. You could actually hold it and line it up pretty straight and tap it in. I'm not gonna do that because I wanna do this side first. Just slowly tapping it. There it is, all the way in. Come over here on the side, you can see how it's flush. I don't wanna go too. Come back on this other side. If we look inside this bottom bracket, you want to make sure that this bearing is flush. You get another spacer like so. This one's 51 millimeters. Look down here, there's a little shoulder right there. When you put this against the other bearing and you drop it down, you want that to be flush with that little shoulder. See how it's flush? Let me see how it's flush right there. That means that this other bearing is going to ride perfectly on there as well. So that's a plus. So next, what we're going to do, back up a little bit so I can show you this. You're going to want to put grease on anywhere where metal touches metal. So that little piece is going to touch the inside of the bearing. So we're going to do that. You could add a little bit of grease. We're going to use our little fancy tool again. You're going to put that spindle right back on here. You're going to put the tube spacer on there. Now when you put this all the way through, it goes through the spindle. And now it's easy for you to line it up. So watch this. Come down here. Check it out. Now, as long as you're hitting it pretty flat and pretty straight, which this is helping out with, it's going to make the bearing go in real easy. When it's really difficult is when the bearing is turned to the side and it doesn't go in exactly straight. So this is going to be the easiest. Now keep in mind, this is going to tear up that bolt a little bit, so you might have to go to the hardware store and buy another bolt if you decide to use these cranks ever again. But the bolt is okay, the spindle's okay, but for a $5 bolt to install your cranks is a lot cheaper than taking it to a bike shop, and fixing it yourself is way easier. Put that on there. Dry fitting it. You want to dry fit it because if you start greasing everything, you start to get your hands dirty. It just gets everywhere and causes a big mess. You end up having to clean a lot of stuff and spending more time working on your bike. What we're gonna do is, we say dry fit, we're gonna put the spindle through. We're gonna take this hat washer and watch me see exactly what this gentleman was saying that he's running into is, yep. See here, he's trying to put a 30 tooth on here. If you look up on the top, come up here and check out the top. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. See, there, right there. See how the sprocket is hitting the chainstay, and the sprocket isn't stopping on that there. So if we're trying to make this wider, we're gonna want to bring this out quite a bit like so to make it clear. So let's see if we can do that. Now we're gonna throw the non-drive one on there just for shits and giggles, and let's see where it sits. Ooh, see, look at that. It's barely, like, that's even hitting. So I'm thinking if we even went with maybe a 5 mil, maybe 2.5. Let's do 2.5. I might clear it just enough. 2.5. We got the 30. There it is. So that's gonna clear. Okay, but we might have a couple other problems that we might be able to resolve here. Let me pull the bike this way for you. Look how there's not too much meat on the spindle here and not too much meat on the spindle here. So that's going to be a big problem when we go to actually install the spindle on the cranks. But also too, if we look back here, if we go right here, notice how this sprocket is not lined up with this chain right here. So if you want to hold that there, I'm going to look to see the chain alignment. It appears that we can move this over to the end and we will still have chain clearance. But there's only one way to find out, is actually trying it out. On this one here, you're gonna need chain width. You're gonna need a crescent wrench. And on this, you wanna hold it like so. Spin it counterclockwise while holding this. Get this out. Sometimes these cogs are pretty stuck on here, so if they are, you might need to wiggle it out. You want to crank it too tight. Now let's check out this chain alignment. Put it right here. Oh, that's better. We're gonna put the chain on it. Chain helps a lot because you get to identify a lot of stuff going on. Pretty close. Pretty close. We could probably move some spacers around and definitely get this thing to work. I think the 30 tooth is good. Start putting on the cranks. But I think we're gonna run into problems, so we might have a to be continued. We got the crank on. Come down here and check this out. It's about halfway down, but on this other side, there's not very much spindle right there. So what we're gonna have to do is see if there's enough. I don't think there's gonna be enough, but I think we're gonna actually, we got carpet. All right, so with that on there, we got this one here. Okay, so just one of those spacers will give us enough distance to keep it from, it might be pretty close. Let's try it. Let me make sure this is the left one. We've got one small little washer here, but we need to make it the same distance as here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stack a few spacers here to make it that thick. Probably this one. Yep, there we go. So these many are gonna be on the drive side. Oh no, we did one more spacer, huh? So right here, you're gonna put this little sprocket bolts in there, tighten it up. Don't go all the way, keep it a little loose. And don't forget to tighten it back up. We're gonna slip it on here. Let me turn this. Take this washer. So it pulls them out quite a bit. Check out this side. See how big of the gap is? See how the big gap this side is? If you look inside of here, and let me spin it around for you. Now look at this side. See how there's not very much in there? It's about half and half. The problem with that is that there's not enough spindle in there for it to hold these crank arms on. So what's gonna happen is that the cranks are gonna keep coming off over and over and over, coming loose. So what we're gonna suggest may or may not work for him, but come down here and also look at this. See how the crank arms are really close here? And if you look on this side, it's not very close. So we don't want that. We want this side on over here to have the same width. So we're gonna try to get a longer spindle so that we could add a few more spacers to get the crank arm to stick out about here and to give it a little bit more even ride. Or we're gonna see if the customer wants a smaller sprocket, which I believe he's not gonna be able to get very much different of a sprocket. It's gonna probably be pretty close. We ran into this, so yeah, stay tuned. I'm gonna show you how we solve it and which way the customer wants to go and what our solution is to get him up and rolling. I contacted the customer, and where we left off was that this spindle was not long enough to allow the cranks to have enough clearance and the sprocket to have clearance and to line up with the rear. We called him, got the answer. We're gonna install this larger profile spindle. This spindle is a 48 spline 19 mil. This one also is a 19 mil 48 spline, so these will fit up nicely. But the difference between these two is that the 6-inch one has a little bit more material, so you have more spindle to bite onto. So the traditional one is 5.625, which is a little over 5.5 inches, and this one's 6, so an extra almost half an inch spindle. So that'll give us more clearance. The other thing is that it has these different bolts, and also the spindle is lighter weight because it's gun hole drilled. So check that out. Can you see inside of there? Yep. The hull all the way through, and it's got different size bolts. This is the original bolt, and this is the profile one, so a little bit different. Check this out. This is the arm. If you're trying to put it in here, see how flush that mounts. So this is the profile one, and that one fits like so. Profile one's a lot more flush, looks a lot nicer. These bolts aren't the same, so this is a lot smaller bolt. This one's a larger bolt, so it can't thread in there. Vice versa, this one won't thread on or do anything. We're gonna install the longer spindle, try to figure out the correct spacing. We kind of mixed it all up. We got a pretty good memory, so we are going to try to put this back together. So we're gonna still do it dry just so that we make sure that it is correct. Oh, this one's a little tight. So I think it's gonna fit, so we're gonna apply grease right now. But to apply the grease, you don't want very much. You just want a thin coat. I always like to do the threads first because the threads are usually where you need it. And then when they get pushed onto the arms get pushed on, it'll spread the grease evenly and get in anywhere that you don't have grease. Done. Get it about even. So we're gonna be putting this on. We're gonna start greasing everything just ever so slightly. First, like I said, everywhere that touches, just a really thin amount of grease. I'm gonna go inside this sprocket. If your cranks are creaking, this is probably why. Aluminum and steel, anywhere where they're touching or rubbing, that's where it's making the creaking sound. So you wanna grease everywhere that metal touches to prevent that. So notice how we're touching every surface with just a little bit of grease. Little spacer. Go first. 3 spacers. Let's see how good our memory is. See if we remembered it correctly. So the tolerance is going to be a little bit tighter on these cranks, which we're experiencing at this moment. And it looks really close. Do you think it's gonna clear? Yeah, it looks like it'll clear. So I guess the next thing up would be, how do we solve that clearance problem or that thickness to get it on the spindle? So there's a couple different ways, but I am going to choose a tool. Let's see how it goes. So we're gonna try to get this arm on with this tool. So this tool will drop inside of here, and then you could use this tool to thread it on, and he doesn't listen at all. Now we got the tool on, we got it threaded. We're gonna tighten it on, and this is gonna pull it on there. Start pulling the arm on. You just keep tightening it down. Now that you tighten it down quite a bit, got that crank arm on it, we're gonna take a hammer and we're gonna make sure that this sprocket doesn't hit the actual chainstay. So we're gonna tap it slowly. Watch it as it gets pretty close. This is the scary part. Wiggle the sprocket while you're tapping it so that it can slide onto that sprocket nice and to give it a little bit harder hit. I don't know why it's not going on. There we go. Getting pretty freaking close. I don't know. I think it's gonna hit. Pretty darn close. Come here, check it out on the top. Right there. Probably the closest we're gonna be able to get it. All right, that looks good. And we're gonna back this out and check it. Pretty far in there. So now we want to push it in farther, but problem is that this one is kind of bottoming out. So we're gonna add some spacers. That's not gonna work in. just so it gets a little bit more bite on the tool. Then we'll back it out again. Now that we tightened it up, we sucked in some of the spindle into the crank arm. You can look in here, it's a little less than halfway through. Now we're gonna go to the other side and try to match it up and get it about the same. What did we say last time we were gonna do? We said we were gonna at least do that, but I think we needed to do more than that.
Yeah, to make it bring out more.
Go at least there.
Because we're closer on this side.
We got the left arm. Now you can see how far that arm is, and the one on the other side is going to be pretty close to that, so I think that's good distance. Now we got good distance on that. I'm going to push this crank back. Now we got to put a little bit grease on here, no grease on the other side. 10 seconds into getting this all together, somebody's going to walk through the door. Now we got the two washers. We're gonna sandwich in between, and now we got. Now line them up is always the hardest for most people. You could get pretty close just by kind of eyeballing it. We're gonna put this tool back on. We gotta bop this a little bit. Start it like this. So I'm gonna try to line it up, maybe come around this side. Let me pull this out, that'll probably help me line it up and then look at it a little bit better. Tolerance is really tight on these. Nope. Got another trick. I didn't want to really do it, but I think we're gonna have to because the tool's not threading in, the crank arm's not going on. So here's another trick. Let me pull this pedal off because I think it's better if we took the pedal off in general. Jeez, I might even have to pull this through axle off. I think I am. We're gonna actually pull this whole wheel off so it could sit flat because I feel like the wheel's tight. There we go. Now the bike's sitting flat. Crank arm's flat on the ground. Got the other crank arm. That's laying on flat on the ground. We could kind of eye it up. Now you could take your rubber mallet, eye it up, and get it started. Make sure it's straight. We're gonna try to get most of it on because this tool is gonna be a pain. Grabbing. Now it's grabbing. Good thing we got carpet. If you have concrete, maybe put some cardboard down or a piece of carpet so that you're not just beating on the asphalt. It will scratch up the other side of your crank arms and all that stuff. So we're gonna throw this bad boy almost all the way on. Now look in there, the crank arm's super far in there. Feels like the crank arm went crazy amount on, but it didn't. Let's do this again. All right, so before I keep tightening, we're gonna look at it again. There's some gap over here. Crank arm's pretty far over here. Easier tightening it this way. Give you a little bit more leverage. I know this one pulled the crank arm in there quite a bit. I don't know if we charge this customer enough money. I think we're a little short. How many minutes we in on this one? 11 minutes. We had 23 minutes earlier. Had a couple more minutes here and there in between customers. So what are we at? We're probably at like 45 minutes just on these cranks. Sweet, I'm gonna back it out right here. I think. Thinking it's in there pretty good. All right, so I'm gonna show you how far it's in there. See how 3/4 of the way, it's almost all the way in there. All right, now on this side, remember it's only about halfway. Let's tighten this side up. Get majority of that spindle in there. Get on this side. Kind of messed up. Alright, so I tightened it a little bit too much. I didn't know that sprocket was about to bottom out. So now the sprocket's stuck and it's not on straight. So we're gonna try to loosen it up a little bit. I'm probably gonna have to hit this pretty hard to get it out of the. Oh. There we go. Got it loose. So we're gonna thread this. Here's this one. And this one. All the sprockets on there now. I can tighten it up. Alright, it bottomed out. Alright, so we got the spindle in there 3/4 of the way. Inside there, you know these crank arms aren't gonna fall off. On the other side, we got them 3/4 of the way in as well. I'm not gonna put the pedals on because we're gonna be messing with the chain right now. And we got the rear wheel here. I'm just gonna do a quick test. Take the chain. We are going to mount this on the bike now and get the correct length that we need. So what I like to do is I like to turn the crank arm here, mount the chain on the actual chain ring and everything so I could see the exact amount. So we're about here. So there's no pin here. They want you to use their pin. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you how to install this chain without that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this chain on the bottom side here. So when the chain stretches, we could take another link out or you could jam it on, but we're going to leave a little bit of slack. We're going to mark it right here, and this is where we're going to pull the pin of the chain. This is how you use a chain breaker. I'm going to back this out. Got my pin marked. I'm going to make sure that pin's right in the center. I'm going to make sure that the chain is good. Slowly push it out. Make sure the chain isn't tilting side to side. I'm going to slowly push it in. See how I pushed in, popped into the little hole. I'm going to push it through. Here's where a lot of people mess up. And the chain ends up falling apart. We're gonna kind of fix that. What we're gonna do is kind of feel for the tension. It feels like it's getting a little bit harder. Usually it is, or when it is, the pin is almost out, just like so. And now you have a little bit in there. So now what I can do is I can put this chain kind of together. Mount this. And now if you come this way and look down the chain line right here, and let me pull this back here. And now that we pull it back, now you can check out the chain alignment and then see how it's doing, which looks pretty good. It might need to go to the right a little bit, but we're gonna check it out right here. So we're gonna put the chain together. If anything, we might have to take this apart and move it over, but if we do that, it might get really close to the dropout, and the chain stays and seat stays. So don't want to move it over, but let's just go from here. So next we're gonna pull this chain off, and we're gonna put this chain together using a vise and some other tools. All right, you can cut it. All right, now that you broke the chain, you sized it up, now it's time to put this thing together. So here's a couple little tricks that I learned that helped me. So what I like to do is this might actually help you too. Since it's directional, or this one's not directional, I like to stick the pin on the outside so that I could push it inwards on the same thing. So I'm not going to put it on the bike, but it helps if you put it on the back sprocket or freewheel, and then you could put the chain on and you could see that the chain is going in the right spot. So now you could just put the chain on if you like. So that helps you make sure that the chain is routed correctly and everything. But here's a trick. I like to grab this little pin and push it in with a set of pliers. See how it went in most of the way? Now from here, I could either try to push it in with pliers some more, or I can come over here to the vise. Now that we got the chain almost put together, little pieces, what I like to do is I like to put the chain right on the corner, kind of keep the plates even. Try pretty hard to see for you guys. Now I'm using the vise to push that pin in the rest of the way. I think it went in all the way. I felt it drop. Nope, I was wrong. All right, now let's try that again. So now I got the chain in there. It's kind of hard. I'm kind of in your way. Ugh. All right, I think it went in there now. Let me back it out. Yeah, so check this out. See if I can see the chain, how it's barely sticking in there. It hasn't gone all the way through. See how it's sticking out farther on this side than it is on this side. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this chain breaker like so. Can you see that right there? Now you're gonna use the chain breaker to push in the rest of it. Now you just want to keep your eye on both the pins and make it even. Now here's the hard part. You don't want to lose where this is at. So we're gonna hold it. Drop that, just leave it. Just leave it. So now we have the chain. We're gonna stick it back in this vise and we're gonna smash these pins So come over here, check this out. Put the pin right on the edge. Now I'm just gonna crank it down really hard. What that is gonna do is that is going to smash the pins out. So it's kind of hard to see, but you can see that the pins are smashed now, and now that piece overhangs on the outer plate. But see how this link is super stiff? Here's the trick to get rid of that. You're gonna bend it this way, the way the chain doesn't bend, and it's gonna free it up. So there's a tight one. And here's the magic. That way, this way. Now look at that thing. It moves freely, just like all of them. Now we can come back here and we could put the chain on. But I'm gonna pull the bike over here so we get more room. And then we can finish up a couple other things and get this guy rolling. All right, so now to put the chain on, what we like to do is put it on the behind the chain and sprocket. Make sure the bolt hole is over here. If we put the cranks on right here, this bolt on the back can grab the chain and cause you some more problems, not giving enough slack to get the chain on. So boom, we got it on. Now we got to do a few things. Major one is pull the wheel back. This one gets a little tricky because it's a 12mm through axle with the 10mm axle adapter. So now I'm tightening these down. There you go. Nice chain alignment. Bike rolls. The chain's semi-tight. Cranks are spinning. Looks pretty nice. Now we're gonna button everything up and make it look nice, like put in the bolts, put on the pedals, and all that stuff. Now it's time to put the bolts and the pedals on. We're gonna start with the right side. Kind of a general rule of thumb is if the crank arm or the spindle is in farther than the other side, you usually want to tighten up or put the bolt in that doesn't have as much spindle in there. But since we already evened it out, we're just gonna thread the bolts in. Sometimes you can put what is that, Teflon tape on here, or PTFE tape, I think it's called, on here to keep these bolts in. But yeah, just thread them in. You don't have to put grease on them. I guess you could if you want, but I don't, because mine usually back out if I do that. These ones have a 6mm, so you could just thread it in. Don't tighten it all the way down because we don't want to pull the spindle out from the other side. And then we're gonna throw it on the other side, just like this side. Pretty easy. And now I'm gonna tighten this thing down pretty good. I'm on this side. Tighten this down pretty good. The next more important thing on the back side right here, the sprocket bolt. Remember I told you not to forget. So I'm gonna tighten that thing up. So don't forget that. Now it's on here. Next is the pedals. Easiest way, line on the left hand side pedal, or there's little ridges on it. So this other one's gonna be the right side. Right here, just barely dab the edge like so. You could take your other pedal and go around slightly. This works well so you don't get grease on your hands. Now you're gonna put it in here. Twist the pedal. This one is going to snug it down. Snug it down. If you don't have a dirt jumper like this and your cranks aren't set up like this and you don't have to make it so wide, what you're gonna do is install the original spindle keep the sprocket closer to the frame. Have your chain alignment over here. You probably won't be able to change your chain alignment because you have a cassette and it's locked or has a fixed position. If you have a single speed cassette like this for a mountain bike, you're able to do this. But if you have a BMX one, you won't be able to do this. So generally, you want to move this sprocket alignment to the rear back here. Not like this one, how we adjusted it and made it work. Traditionally on BMX cranks, you want them a lot closer than this on a BMX bike. You definitely want a little bit of clearance, at least, a 1/16 of an inch clearance, so that when that crank arm flexes, it doesn't hit the frame and ding your frame right here. So if you have ding marks right here, it's probably because your frames or your cranks are flexing, or your cranks came loose and now they're hitting the frame. But general rule of thumb, you want about 3/4 of a spindle inside of your crank arm. More is better, obviously. If you have less than that, it's prone to falling off, and your cranks falling off, coming loose, and just having a lot more problems. But that's the general rule of thumb of how to install some cranks, how to size them up and get everything corrected. Stay tuned, because we're going to teach you how to bleed brakes and problem solve. We got a rotor here that's leaking, oil's all over the hub, the brakes not working. You have to pump it before it actually stops. Actually, this one don't even work at all, so we got to re-bleed it, cut the cable, just find out where the leak is. So if you have a problem like this, watch this next video and I could totally help you out fixing your hydraulic brakes.